So welcome to the official post-show. We are live in Las Vegas at the HyperX Arena. Super excited to be here. This is our first time with a live audience.
It's so cool.
And thank you so much for joining us on stream. We are going to be talking with everybody for the next hour or so, getting into a little bit more detail about everything that we just announced on the stream. So, first off, let's introduce everybody. I'm Gina. I am one of the community managers for The Elder Scrolls Online.
Hi, Gina.
I'm Jess Folsom, Senior Community Manager on The Elder Scrolls Online.
And we have Rich Lambert with us, who you literally just saw.
His hair. I just want to call out his hair is purple, as promised.
Purple, yeah.
Still purple. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves too?
Sure. I'm Lehman Tuttle. I'm the lore master for The Elder Scrolls Online.
My name is Kyle. I am an ESO stream team partner, and I stream at Kyle Dempster Studio. Well, it's twitch.tv/Kyle Dempster Studios.
Nice plug.
And my name is Cash. I'm from the Lore Seekers Podcast. You can find us at loreseekerspodcast.com.
All right, so let's dive right in. So we just wanted to talk about our viewership milestone rewards. So I'm happy to let you know we did unlock the long-winged bat pet. So all you have to do to qualify for that is to log into the game and kill one monster. We'll have more details on the ESO website tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. We did not hit the snow bear plunge number, but y'all have been so great and we love you so much, we're going to do it anyway. Sorry. So keep an eye out for details. Are you going to come with us?
I will recruit some devs. How's that sound?
Yes.
Lean in.
Mike?
Not doing it. Not doing it.
Also, the Greymoor Chapter is available for pre-purchase right now on theelderscrollsonline.com. We have an article up on the website that will help you choose what version is best for you. You get a lot of really cool pre-purchase rewards, including the whole Breaker War Horse, which you can get right now. There's actually people running around in the game with it right now, I'll bet. And there's also a physical collector's edition. We heard you. We know you wanted one, so that one is available for a pre-purchase right now as well. And it comes with this really cool vampire lord statue, not Gina's chest. We also have a sale going up on the Bethesda merch store right now, 10% off. The code word is Skyrim, and you can get 10% off select items. There's also a whole bunch of really cool new Dark Heart of Skyrim items, including the reliquary.
The reliquary here, yeah.
Again, I'm not pointing at Gina.
I'm not up for pre-purchase. All right, so what did we just announce? We announced our brand new chapter, which is Greymour, the new year-long story, which we're calling Dark Heart of Skyrim for this year, the Harrowstorm DLC. There's a lot that we need to dig into in this show. And as Jess mentioned, that you can pre-purchase Greymour now. We know there's been a little hiccups on the website a little bit, but if you're having issues getting in there, we are working really hard to make sure that you can get in and pre-purchase. Again, you can check out all the website for all the different items that you can get, including the physical collector's edition. So next week, we're kicking off with Harrowstorm, coming to the PTS, which is super exciting. Includes 2 new dungeons. The prologue quest is going to be on there. We have the patching overhaul, the performance updates, which we are going to be talking about in a couple minutes. But first, we've seen some questions coming up in the community in the last 45 minutes or so since we finished our announced stream. There's one that we want to address, and we have seen some questions from our players on PlayStation 4 asking, where's the Greymoor chapter? Why can't I pre-purchase it yet? So due to circumstances outside of our control, the chapter is not available for pre-purchase at this time on PS4, but please know that we have you covered. We will make sure that you're able to get the pre-purchase items. You'll have the opportunity. So just keep an eye on the official ESO website and social channels for more information. one of the other things that I saw coming up a couple times was with Antiquities. There are some folks asking if we're going to accommodate colorblind mode for those that can't see the colors in some of the puzzles. We are definitely taking that into account, so have no fear. You will still be able to participate.
That's why it's shape
really good
and
question.
Shapes and colors. Yeah. All right, so Rich, you just have a few moments before you need to head out, so we don't want to take too much of your time. But we did want to start
He'll still
with.
be here.
Well, yeah, he'll be here, just not out in cyberspace.
You're not getting away that easy.
So we want to kind of address the elephant in the room first, which is game performance, because we know this is really important to a lot of people.
Everyone.
So can you provide an update on sort of the current state of performance? Because I know some people maybe haven't played in a few months, they've heard some things. What's going on with performance right now?
Well, I think that the first big thing is we actually had a successful Undaunted event. We finally got that done. That LFG tool, the team worked really, really hard on it. They completely rebuilt it from the ground up, and it withstood this event, which is great. There were a few things that shook out of it. We're still working on it. It's not perfect yet, but we're still going to continue to work on it and make it better. But it made it through, which was great.
Well done, guys.
Yeah.
We tried.
Trust me, we were watching and we were sweating, but yeah, it made it, which was great.
Great work.
So update 25, this is coming to PTS next week. This is going to include the patching overhaul, frame rate improvements, but what does that actually mean to a player? What are they going to notice from that?
The big thing is the game is going to be smaller on disk. You have to re-download the entire game, but once you do that, it's going to be roughly 30 gigabytes smaller, which is good.
Does that also mean that the patches after that will also be smaller?
They will be smaller going forward.
On all platforms.
On all platforms, which is really important. We know that's a pain point for players. Yep. And the other big part of this is just the game is going to load faster. It's going to load more reliably, less infinite load screens of doom. I know that's the thing that happens a lot, or frequently. And your overall frame rate's going to be better because of the loading system can just load the assets faster.
So question, because this game's big and it takes people a while to download it based on their internet. Is there any kind of incentive players might have to do this?
Yeah, so what we're going to do for a period of time after it goes live is there's going to be a free pet in the Crown Store that you can purchase. I think it's the Crimson Torch bug.
Crimson Torch bug pet. Yeah.
I know that is a pet that there's a lot of players that are very interested in that. So that'll be there as kind of an incentive to, hey, go through, re-download the game, but get this really cool, neat thing.
I think that was one of the critters in Murkmire, wasn't it?
I saw a lot of people asking before, like, how do I get that torch bug?
Yeah. That's
People
the one.
want it.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned the frame rate improvements. That's across all zones, like even in Cyrodiil?
Even Rawcom? During prime time?
Yes.
No way.
Even So keep in mind that this isn't a silver bullet that magically fixes all problems, all ills. This is the first step in many performance improvements that we're working on, but is a very good first step.
Okay.
Can I butt in again and
Please
just say, so Rich, my game crashes a lot. I might be a little bit of an add-on addict. I don't know. I'm not admitting it yet. I'm not ready for that. It's only 100, okay?
You only
have or more. Will this help at all, any of these, with crashes or anything like that?
So it won't help your problem with add-ons.
Specifically you.
You're special, Kyle.
But we actually have an incremental going out that fixes a number of memory leaks. So I know players have been talking about, I'm in Cyrodiil, for instance, playing for a few hours, and the performance just kind of goes down. It takes longer to load. My frame rate doesn't work very well. And we fixed a couple of memory leaks specifically to address that.
That actually went out this morning. That was the patch today.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, we're hard at work on all aspects.
Thank you. Save me.
So since this is hard question time, I guess it's my turn to dig into you a little bit.
go ahead.
So I'm one of those players that logs into the game, and I like the game to just run smoothly. Like, I don't know any of the back-end stuff. I really don't care any of the back-end stuff about any of the back-end stuff. I just want my game to run smoothly. So at this point, I guess my question is, are we going to fix the fact that my character still runs on top of my mount, or is that just a permanent
No!
It's a feature.
Do you guys want us to fix it?
If they don't want it fixed, can we make it a freaking achievement?
I mean, at this point, it's kind of like an Easter egg. I mean, it's been in the game for as long as I can remember. It's probably not going to get fixed anytime soon.
What about the one where your character literally humps the ground?
That's an achievement.
We might look at that one, but
Humps the
we'll see.
ground?
I mean, it's not.
You want to demonstrate that for us?
Yes, please demonstrate. Please don't take this from us. We need
You haven't seen that
Does
one?
it work?
Family show, ma'am.
Does that have role-play repercussions if we pull it out? So, Rich, what about Update 26, the base game patch that's coming with Greymoor? Are there any performance updates coming for that one?
No.
No, not at all. Okay, moving on.
We've got those on our roadmap. I think one of the big things there is the multi-core support. You know, getting in there and really utilizing more cores on your CPU to better offload the work of the game, so that things can load a bit faster, a little bit more optimally.
I have something here in my notes about AoE ability types more specialized on the server. What does that mean?
My eyes just glazed over.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the engineering team and the combat team have been working on is looking at how area of effect abilities are run on the server. You know, when you cast an area of effect, there's, you know, the area, and it's got to pick, you know, how many players are in there, who's the right targets. And so they optimized that specific type of ability so that it just runs better on the server.
That sounds like it would have pretty big impact
There
on
is potential
Cyrodiil.
for it, to really improve things.
In a good way. Yes. Cool.
All right, well, we don't want to take too much more of your time. You know, you have a lot of interviews to do, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We are actually going to swap Rich out with Mike Finnegan,
Upgrade.
but while we do that... Show's about to really start and get good, so we're going to show you a short video.
He's just going to sit here and be quiet and not talk.
I highly doubt that. So we're going to show you guys a quick video while we swap these guys out.
Hi, Finn.
Hey!
Look who we found.
Look who we found. Everybody welcome Mike Finnegan, Dungeon Lead. I see you got the memo about what color we needed to
Yes,
wear.
everybody has to wear black.
Coordinated.
Dark heart.
So we
Dark heart of Skyrim.
Hey, nice.
Rich was wearing green. I don't know how he slipped through. What
So we
else?
just watched a video about the Harrowstorm DLC.
We did.
Your team is working on a couple of dungeons for that. We're going to talk about those in just a minute. But first, we want to dive into a brand new system, which we think maybe you guys want to hear a little bit more about, coming with Greymoor, called Antiquities.
Heck yeah.
So, Lehman, let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so Antiquities are really rad. I'm really excited about it. It's a really awesome system. I know Rich spoke about it at length during the thing, but basically when you break it down, it's 2 mini games that allow you as a player to travel around Tamriel and find all sorts of really cool stuff. And cool stuff includes, things that you can put in your house.
Like this.
Like this guy right here, Ruby Dragon Skull.
That is awesome.
All sorts of things like emotes, and then things that players can use in combat. A little bit of something for everybody.
So let's talk a little bit about how the system works, because it is a little bit confusing when you
Little
first
nuts and
hear
bolts.
about
Sure.
it. So how do you kind of get started with Antiquities?
Right, so when you get into the Dark Heart of Skyrim and you go to Solitude for the first time, there's a group called the Antiquarian Circle, and you go and you speak to them, and they'll run you through a short tutorial that introduces you to both minigames. You get a chance to hang out with fan favorite Gabrielle. We haven't seen her in a long time.
Ah, from the base game, yeah?
Exactly, yeah, so...
She's been busy
Gabrielle
getting this
fans
whole
over
system
there.
together.
Yeah, I know, there you go.
I knew they were in the house.
It's like the bride side, all the Gabrielle.
So yeah, you get to hang out with her. She walks you through the system, and then you're pretty much off to the races. You get to go find cool stuff from every historical era of Tamriel.
I got a question about the way that actually works, because I admittedly suck at this game. So
I'm glad we brought you on the show.
False modesty.
How'd you get on stage?
in regards to the minigame, if you're better at the minigame, or worse at the minigame, does it change the way that your rewards are delivered to you?
No, I mean, during the minigame, you can redo it if you don't think that you've done a good enough job. And when it's not going to be there's not going to be a large barrier of entry for players. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, I messed up on the Antiquarian's Eye and I'll never find anything. We try to keep it, accessible for everyone so that everybody can take part in the system.
So it's no adult tantrums like I have in VMA.
Well, no, but to mention what he said, I mean, there is a skill element to it, a mastery element to it, where you're going to get better the more you do it and the more you practice. A lot like VMA. Well, some people.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, there's a mastery element to it that we want you to kind of like focus on and get better at doing this.
Including 2 skill lines that are specific to the Antiquity system itself.
Awesome.
So we kind of heard this when Rich was up on stage, but I think anytime a new system like this is added to a game, players may have the question, is this going to be scalable? Rich mentioned it very briefly, but like it's going to be in the old world, it's going to be in Skyrim. Is this something we are going to maybe see going forward as well?
Absolutely. That's one of the coolest things about it is that it's kind of baked into the cake of Tamriel generally. So it'll drive you back to previous zones you haven't been in.
Tamriel's a cake, FYI.
It is a cake. It's a cake of many layers. It's a many-layered cake. But yeah, you're going to go back to every region of Tamriel that you've been before, and the antiquities that you find there are appropriate to the space that you're in. So if you go back to Alakir, maybe you'll find an ancient Yokuden relic. If you go to, if you're hanging out in Skyrim, you might find something from Atmora. So there's all sorts of really interesting, like really deep dive historical lore things.
I don't know if you find any Imperial stuff, because Imperials don't really have a homeland.
Yikes.
Personal attack.
So security, make sure Ranger has to come on stage, please.
So this sounds like it's the biggest non-combat activity that we've added to the game since housing.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
And it's something that if you need to take some time off and you don't want to be, killing a bunch of things, it's kind of a Zen activity. You can go out, hang out, and the things that you find, though, apply to any kind of game style that you can think of. So you have things that you can get in the Antiquity system that are great for combat. Things in the Antiquity system that you can get that are great for furnishing your house. There's a little bit of something for everybody, so everybody will be able to engage in the system and have a really good time.
I think Rich mentioned, what's that?
Can you sell them?
No.
It's bound.
Good question.
They're bound.
That's an excellent
They're,
question.
they're bind on equipped, the items that you get. Or bind, they're bind on accounts.
Yeah.
So I think Rich mentioned the siege weapon for PvP. That's a brand new siege weapon that players can get.
It's
which is
really
pretty
rad,
cool.
too.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It's nuts.
He also mentioned the special mount that you can get, and this is only available through Antiquities. We actually have a screenshot if you guys want to see it.
I love it.
It is.
So yeah, you can only get that mount through Antiquities, and it's pretty badass. It's not like your basic horse.
Absolutely.
So it's cool.
Another thing Rich mentioned was the mythic items, and I kind of want to touch on that because they're one-piece items. You can only wear one of them, so you could equip it. And the idea behind the mythic items is not just combat related or anything like that. Sometimes it's going to change how you play the game. So when he mentioned the jewelry piece that increases your non-combat speed by double. I mean, that's perfect for people going out in the world and hunting crafting nodes and doing everything like that. So they're going to be able to zip through the world and do stuff. So it's kind of going to, these items are not just designed to I'm better in combat. They're also designed to cater to different kinds of gameplay.
That's cool. I heard a question from the crowd. The mount, is it something that you get whole, or do you you find pieces and put it together?
I
Do you remember?
believe that you put it together.
Put it together? Okay.
More details at 11.
Yeah, TBD.
We will have a full article on this.
Absolutely.
Like we usually do for new systems.
That sounds like it's player testable. On
It
GTA.
sure does.
So being kind of a lore hound, I do have a question about the Antiquities and the lore perspective. Is there a way in game for us to kind of track the things that we found and where we're going with finding some of these relics?
So one of the coolest things about the system is that we're as lore is developed, it's delivered through the world in our game. We don't come in and say this is what it is. as you're finding things, there are different characters who will add text to a journal where they'll explain, oh, we think it's this, we think it's that, we think it came from here. Well, I don't know. And so there's going to be a lot of
lore in a nutshell.
Exactly. So that ambiguity is going to be carried through the whole thing, and so there'll be a lot to read and a lot to learn as we go along.
And yeah, it does add on to it as you progress through it.
Exactly.
So you can get more bits of that lore.
I honestly see like guilds being formed after this system. I truly do. For the true lore hounds out there,
They all work together,
Out
yeah.
UESP and the Imperial
Nice.
Library.
Is there going to be an Antiquities Seekers podcast?
I mean,
idea?
The
Should be
fact
a
that
segment.
the fact that this appeals to so many players. I mean, we've talked 3 times now at this point, but the fact that there's PvE, PvP, all of this, it brings togeted the community at large into this, and I think that's something the game has needed. So huge kudos.
Yeah, I know
And,
you've talked a lot about on your
I
streams
may
about
have.
like we'd really like something to do that isn't just questing
Another
or combat.
activity.
So yeah.
Well, you don't want to fish all day long?
I mean, fishing's great, but now we can dig.
Yeah.
But it does go to show to tag on to what
It's like digging is like fishing in the dirt.
It's like fishing in the dirt.
There's your quote for the day.
Yeah, right?
Tattoo that on you, Vegas.
All right, so as just mentioned, we will definitely have an article on the website explaining Antiquities when it gets a little bit closer to PTS. This is in quarter 2 with the chapter. So let's move on a little bit to the vampire. We want to kind of sink our teeth into.
And the crowd grows.
I'll be here all night until 6.
We're revamping the vampires.
Yeah, so Vampire skill line, as Rich mentioned, is undergoing some changes. So what's sort of the goal behind, I hate to say it again, but revamping the vampire?
Well, it's to make vampirism feel more visceral. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we're presenting kind of a power fantasy for every kind of vampire through the new skill line. So there's abilities where you can mesmerize people like Count Dracula. There's abilities where you can, take life away from people in a really kind of like feral way, like with, this crazy eviscerate slash. So everybody who wants to get a real sense of what it's like to be a vampire in Tamriel, this is a great place to do it. So as Rich mentioned before, we're doing all these new animations, paired animations where you can, jump on people and drink their blood and stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and we've also gone back in the Vampire Quest tutorial and revamped it to.
I know it's hard.
That joke just comes out of nowhere.
Keeps going.
Last year it was elsewhere. Every
Yeah,
time
right,
somebody talked about it, I'm going to go elsewhere.
Now we're revamping Vampire.
But yeah, so the new the quest is going to bring you up to speed on how the new system works, and it's really sweet. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's also like Vampire before was cool and all, but it was kind of like one passive, right? Like people got this, and then they kind of hung out, got this passive, the undeath passive, and they're like, all right, I'm just gonna hang out with that and get my magicka back or whatever that is.
It's a lot more active
So
now.
now it's more active. Actually, we've even kind of flipped the script a little bit. Like before, the less you fed, the stronger you got. And then in the new vampire line, in order to make it active, the more you feed, the stronger you get. So we're kind of flipping around that paradigm that if you want to be a vampire and you want to be a badass vampire, you have to feed and get stronger.
And your look changes too, right? As you
Yes,
feed more.
and that's another thing too, is before your look would change the less you feed, and now it's the more you feed, your look will change. That's it, we're done here. Thank you, good night.
Okay, so you guys know I'm a huge quester, a huge lore nerd. I do all that. I don't spend my time dancing in Eleanor.
Hey, that's for later.
So we have this amazing statue of Vampire Lord sitting there.
We do.
But we were also taught in previous Skyrim that they're kind of very rare and they're not something we approach. I'm sure some community members are out there wondering, how are you guys approaching it without making it feel overly normalized or anything like that?
Yeah, I know. Should we get into the ult for?
We might as well.
I think you should.
Might as well.
They
Rich
wanted
said he didn't want to spoil it.
I'm sorry,
but
Rich.
that's him.
I'm sorry.
That's not us. That was the main show. We're the post show.
So I'll spoil it. The ult for the vampire skill line is that the player is able to turn into what we're calling a blood scion, which is much
Which is
like
a vampire lord.
one of those guys.
Which is a vampire lord.
And it's really rad.
That's the ultimate?
It is
Yes,
the ultimate.
that's the
yes.
ult, yeah.
And there's definitely been a lot of debate in the lore community about, is the Vampire Lord form, is that exclusive to the Volkihar clan that we see in Test 5? Mother Lame is the kind of the mother of vampires. She can manifest her vampiric powers in a lot of different ways. And since the player gets their powers directly from Lame and the right of the Scion or whatever, she gives you that ability to turn into that form. So, the lore's sound. Don't worry, it's we're in good shape.
We got this.
It's almost like we have a lore master to keep watch on.
Talking about lore, because I'm pretty sure it's pretty clear that I'm a pretty big lore nerd.
No way.
But anyway, I want to ask a question specifically about all of the different vampire clans, because you did mention the Volkihar clan, and if you're going to open the door, I'm going to go right through it. So, my question is specifically in Skyrim, are we going to see anything? It sounds like all of the different skills that we're going to get are kind of different in each way. Are they reminiscent of some of the different vampire clans that are present in Skyrim and throughout Tamriel?
Absolutely. So we're not going to deal a lot with the Volkihar clan. They've got, Lord Harkon has a lot of plans that are in long-term development.
He's in pre-pro right now.
Yes. But the different iconic vampirism abilities are all going to be present. So vampiric drain, the ability to feed like you would in previous titles, and so you're definitely going to feel like all the greatest hits of vampirism in Tamriel are represented for sure.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah! That was exciting.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Awesome. So it sounds like vampires have a lot to look forward to in the next
right.
chapter. So we want to talk about how does this fit into the overall chapter? We want to talk a bit more about Greymoor and the zone in which it takes place. So let's dig into that a little bit.
Sure.
We're going to use dig in a lot, aren't we?
Let's sink our teeth in.
Sink our teeth
Let's
in.
sink our teeth in.
So Skyrim that we present in Greymoor and the Dark Heart of Skyrim is, obviously it's almost 1,000 years before the events of Test 5. So the situation is very different. Rather than a battle between the Stormcloaks and the Imperials, you have this kind of Cold War brewing between West and East. In the East, you've got King Yoren, who everybody knows him from our original release. He's hanging out in the Ebonheart Pact with the Dark Elves and the Argonians. Now we're heading west. The High King there. There are actually two High Kings right now. So the High King in the west is King Svargrim. And the West is much more isolationist. They're much more, kind of standoffish. But they're very proud Nords. They're Nords. When they talk about death and Sovngarde, they mean it. So players will get a chance to hang out with this different group of Nords, and the way that the power struggle between Svargrim and what's going on with the rest of the world plays a big role in the quest itself.
What about the art direction? So there's going to be areas that people have seen before in the Elder Scrolls V, and then there's going to be some newer areas that they haven't really experienced before. So what was kind of the general art direction for our version of Skyrim?
I think that hits the nail on the head, right? It's presenting Skyrim in a way that's unique to Elder Scrolls Online. So you get the best of Test 5 in going back to kind of the greatest hits of it's Solitude, it's Blackreach, you've got Labyrinthian. There's all these really cool places that you can go. But we've also, like I said, it's 1,000 years in the past, so there's the things that are a little bit different.
There's just enough that if people played TS5, that they'll get it. Like you go to
You'll
Solitude and you kind of
recognize
see, is every house in the same place? I don't know, you know what I mean? But like
I've walked through it, and it's
Solitude's a different thing. But as you're going through, like some of these little like shacks and stuff like that might not be there because they haven't been built yet or something like that. But very much like you walk through the major points into the major cities, and you're going to recognize. It's a lot like we did in Morrowind or any of the other areas.
Yeah.
Can we take a moment, though, to talk about the fact
Absolutely,
Rich,
Kyle. We could take a
let's
moment.
do it. Let's have a moment.
Let's take a moment,
So
Kyle.
I think Rich actually set this up earlier, but this zone is split in a very interesting way because
Absolutely.
people in the community were speculating, Dark Heart of Skyrim, does that mean we are in Blackreach? What does that mean? A 60-40 split, I believe, is what we're looking at. That's
Yes.
insane. What inspired that kind of huge dynamic shift like that.
Well, I mean, I think Blackreach is just a really cool area. Players got a chance to run around in there. You've got, giant glowing mushrooms and Dwemer ruins, and we were able to build upon that and, add even more Blackreach and different types of biomes. Like you saw during the video, Greymoor Keep is kind of a warmer palette. So you've got different types of cave environments to explore, and I've been running around in there, during development, and it's wild. It does not feel small. It feels big.
And that's also part of like the story also very much drives this kind of thing. So like as you go into Blackreach and stuff like that, it's not forced or anything like that. The story is driving you down there. It makes sense. If we're talking about vampires, this is a place that doesn't get light. It just makes sense that that's where they would build their kingdom, kind of thing.
So speaking of not getting light, I imagine that would allude to the fact that we're possibly going to see Falmer in Blackreach.
Well,
Tough questions.
It's during our time period, Falmer. This is not test 5. When people talk about Falmer, that's ghost stories like, oh, there's these weird things that come out of the ground sometimes, and I think they ate Joe's goat a few weeks ago. So
that's pretty much every Falmer story.
Yeah, exactly. It all ends in a goat.
They ate Joe's goat.
But there's a pretty good chance that the player might encounter some Falmer along the way.
Okay, I got a question because you guys sent out these amazing maps to the community members,
Right.
and many people here spent hours speculating.
Did they?
Yes.
Wow.
Boy, and they did a
Websites
great job.
There's like entire
One day.
algorithms
They did a great
put in
job,
place
too.
for this.
Any chance we can know what those maps actually mean?
Should we reveal all at this point?
You guys want us to? Okay.
So when you put those maps together, I think the community did an amazing job of
Yeah, they
translating
did.
the
They
data.
did a good job.
We did not make it easy for you.
Yeah, good job. Good job.
So great work.
Next year, 400 different maps. Figure it out.
So when a lot of people were pretty much there, when you line up those maps in exactly the right way, if you take a look at it, the markings on the map correspond to the major locations in the Greymoor Chapter. So you've got Morthal, Solitude, Dragon Bridge, and a number of spots that might become relevant during the quest.
There are
Right.
some parts that you might look at and go, oh, what's this? And you'll figure it out.
You will.
Can I just say, Daedric is really freaking hard to decrypt?
I got to tell you, man, hats off, because they did not make it easy for you.
I'm not that smart. Man, it was hard to decrypt
You're
some of that stuff.
educating people, right?
Right,
You're
that's
teaching
what
a
it
new
is.
language.
Everybody should get on Duolingo and
There
learn
you go.
Daedric.
That's right. Yeah, take the Daedric course in Duolingo. Yeah.
So you touched on the time period a little bit. So how did the general time period in ESO versus Skyrim, like what's going on during this time period when Greymoor takes place, and how did that inspire the tone and the general vibe of the zone?
Yeah, it's a really cool time in Tamrielic history for a lot of reasons. There's a lot going on. In Skyrim, like I said, there's you've got that Cold War brewing between the two halves of Skyrim, and a lot of times one of the cool things about doing what we do is we're able to tease, hey, this is how things might resolve, and there are things that happen in this quest that might kind of determine the trajectory of the region generally. For those of you who are wondering, how is Skyrim gonna stitch the wounds back together again and see how things are going? And over the course of the year, you might figure some of that out. In terms of tone, the Western Skyrim it's a hard place. It's a cold place full of grumpy people.
It's a dead planet. It's a bug planet.
Do you want to know more?
Do you want to know more?
And Rich mentioned a bit that it's a bit similar to Rivenspire in tone
Absolutely.
and style too.
Yeah, that gothic tone, I think, is
Yeah.
where we were
Grittier,
going with that feel
darker,
of like,
grittier, yeah.
you're walking into Vampire Land.
Yep.
That's what
Now,
we're
is there
going
any
for.
bleed over from any of the other
Bleed!
stories?
I get it, bleed.
Is there any crossover between any of the stories that we may have already played through in the base game and to what we're going to experience in Skyrim?
Well,
The inclusion of Lyr's Titanborn, that's a big one.
Yeah, big Lyris.
No Lyris mount. Sorry.
No Lyris asking for a friend.
No Lyris mount.
Are there any other returning characters? I know Rich mentioned a few.
Well, like Rich said, everybody's favorite dark elf to hate, Narcissus Dren's back.
Narcissus Dren is back.
We've got Narama, we've got Rigger, there's Titanborn, there's a ton of characters who are gonna come back to players.
Some members of the Raven Watch.
Yeah, including, like, speaking of Rivenspire, we've got some members of the Raven Watch who might show up.
You'll have to wait and see who they are.
Yes, you will have to wait and see who they are.
So I saw somebody mention when we were playing the CG trailer at the start of the show, some people in Twitch chat were like, who's that woman and why is she so big? Like, she is probably
Who's that
some people may not understand, right? So do you want to get into like why she is just towering over everybody else?
Well, first I'll say you guys should play the main quest of the original game. That'll explain it all. But yeah, she has giant blood in her veins, and that makes her real big.
Yep.
She's our snow lily.
She's our snow lily, yes. She's a badass.
She is. She is really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to shift our focus a little bit from Greymoor and Skyrim the Zone, talk a little bit more about the trial. That's the 12-player content. So Kyne's Aegis is the trial coming in the Greymoor Chapter. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that? Which I know I don't have to beg you to talk a little bit more.
Talking about a trial? Why, whatever should I say? So Kyne's Aegis it takes place on an island that actually is in TS5 Skyrim, but it's just an island you can go to and mine and stuff like that. So what this is where what the island was before it became a barren wasteland. And what it is in the north of Skyrim, and it's like a bulwark. That's why it gets the name Kyne's Aegis, which is the shield from the north of Skyrim. So it's there to fishing and mining, but also to protect against northern invaders. And coincidentally, that's what you're doing when you get there, is you're repelling a northern invasion or an invasion from somewhere.
So let's talk a little bit about the size. Is it similar to any previous trials?
Yeah, I think that when we hit elsewhere, we got that was a good model going forward.
Sunspire.
What did I say?
Elsewhere.
Yeah, elsewhere. No, the whole trial is as big as elsewhere. It's 475 bosses. It's crazy. No, it's as big as Sunspire. There are 3 bosses. There's 3 hard modes. Unlike Sunspire, it has a more linear approach where you go from boss 1, 2, and 3. You can't take the first 2 in any order. We think that size was pretty good, and people had a good experience when they go through there. Also, the 3 different hard modes gave this level of varying levels of difficulty that people could challenge themselves and push themselves. So as they get through one hard mode, then they can go and try another hard mode. If they can't do it, they're not out anything. They can just complete it on veteran.
Important question for all the collectors out there of mounts, pets, everything in between. Last year with Sunspire, you introduced a mount behind an achievement.
Behind the big achievement.
Yes, the big one. Are we looking at something similar this year?
We are indeed. It will be just as hard as Sunspire's achievement, so it's not going to be for everybody, but it's going to be pretty cool.
Why are you looking at me?
Why do you have a guilty conscience, guys? Why do you have a guilty conscience?
I can teach how to dance now. That's fine.
Kyle's offering dance lessons. It'll be behind some of the hardest content, but we are planning on doing that again. And, I'm not going to tell exactly what it is yet, but it's going to be pretty cool.
It is cool.
I do know. How dare you?
What about other types of rewards for those of us that maybe aren't good enough to get them out?
We got the standard. We're going to have a skin reward. We're going to have the armors and all that jazz that we normally do. So, all that super special stuff that we always throw into trials.
Right on.
Have y'all done anything new or different with the trial?
Nope. I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course.
Very boring.
Very boring. So
back a box feature.
Commonly, people kind of skip the base pop, or they blow through it and they just kind of group stack and kill and stuff like that. So we've played some extra focus on the base pop to make it a little bit more challenging. Players have to kind of think about that stuff.
Think.
Yes. I know. It's new and different.
Ben, can you talk to me like I'm a kindergartner? What the heck is base pop?
So base pop is
Should I sit down and
I'll answer this question, then you get your crackers. All right. So base pop is commonly referred to as trash. It is all of the not bosses in the dungeon. So
Now I
it's the
get
monsters that now you get it. Now you get it. I don't call it trash because they have feelings.
It doesn't matter.
Don't tell me that, then I feel bad. I don't feel bad.
So for our final segment, we are going to talk a little bit about the first DLC coming, Harrowstorm.
Yeah.
So this is really our only opportunity to sort of give a preview of this DLC before it hits the PTS. So
Next week?
Next week, yes, very exciting. Frantically trying to get everything.
Where's my tear jar? Oh, I can use this.
Reliquary of tears.
Oh, reliquary of tears.
So let's start with Ice Reach, which is one of the dungeons that is in this DLC.
One of the great things about doing these dungeons is
But he gets to have me as a writer.
Lehman got to be my writer for this. Who gets to have the lore master as their lead writer for their
Well, that's
for
what
their
you used to
content?
do before you were lore master, right?
Yeah.
Don't diminish his accomplishment. It's still great.
He's still wonderful. You matter. So let's talk a little bit about Ice Reach. What's kind of the history behind that?
Yeah, so Ice Reach is another island in the Sea of Ghosts where the Ice Reach Coven basically has their base. You guys might remember Droda from previous dungeon content.
Dire Frost,
This is where her coven, that's the seat of their power. And the player is directed to go, Yorin, the Scald King, sent a bunch of Nords to check out this island because there's this huge storm brewing and it was sinking ships. And the people who went out to go see what was going on, they never came home. So the player goes out, meets up along the way with Lyris Titanborn, and it wrecks faces and solves the mystery.
Sea of Ghosts and people didn't come back.
I know,
right?
It's
It's hard to
like
believe, right?
Pikachu face.
So wait, I'm smelling a trend here. So we're building off of Dire Frost. So you guys, I saw Celine last time.
Yep.
You know, that's a continuation, wrapping that.
Thoraya from Wrathstone Dungeons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are you guys moving in that direction of kind of giving some of these plots extra parts?
Yeah, I mean, we always like to kind of take a look at not just the past of our game, but the past of Elder Scrolls games and bring it. We did it with kind of, if you look at the Elder Scrolls past, Fang Lair, which was in, I think, Arena, and then we brought that kind of like into our world. And so, using things that we've had in previous dungeons, kind of fleshing out their stories and telling them and finishing them. So Droda of Ice Reach had an interesting story in Dire Frost, but now you get to see where she came from and her sisters in the coven that she came from.
Awesome. Dungeons is a really big thing for me, and
I'm glad to hear that, guys.
I know our guild loves the dungeons. We actually go into lore mode and just kind of slow down, and we absorb the story, which we really love. Layman, please say that you're proud of me for doing this.
I'm super proud of you for doing that.
Thank you.
Everybody's proud of him. That's all we're doing.
Were you just fishing for compliments? Is that what you were doing?
I'm setting you up. 'cause I have a
okay,
pet
all
peeve.
right.
It's a minuscule pet peeve, but I do have a pet peeve.
Oh.
Some of the NPCs, particularly Thoraya, hide behind a freaking rock while we're doing all the work in these dungeons. So my question is, can we expect Lyris Titanborn to help us?
So that's a big thing for the characters that we're dealing with. Thoraya is very much scholarly and she didn't kind of get her hands dirty.
Right.
But Lyris is a badass. And she absolutely will
She's not gonna hide behind a rock.
She is not going to hide behind a rock. She's not going to be a damsel in distress. You don't you don't save
She's like,
her
"Get out of
or
my
do
way."
anything like that. What's pretty funny is you meet up with her. You're not following her. She's not grouping up with you or anything like that. But what it is you're going through different parts of this island, and she's going through. So when you meet up with her, it's like in a swath of blood as she's just cleaved like several people, and then she comes up and talks to you and she's like, I got shit to do. You know, like, and she goes off, kills some more people. So what's pretty funny is the stuff that you go through when you get to fight, you can imagine she did 10 times worse shit.
I don't think there's a scene that she shows up in that she doesn't murder
cleave somebody to
right
death.
before
It's
she
exactly
talks.
right. It's exactly right. Every time you see her, she's killing someone.
All right, so let's move on to Unhallowed Grave, which is the other dungeon.
Yes,
in
that's
this
the one you
DLC.
saw with the grappling hook.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's how you use grapple hook.
Grappling hook.
Yep.
It's the universal grappling hook symbol.
All right, so what's going on in this dungeon?
You grappling hook.
That's it. That's all you do. Just grapple around everywhere.
That's it. Just go in circles.
You want to explain?
Yeah, sorry, we're taking away, Lehman. Anytime somebody brings up grappling hooks, I'm just totally shut down. The dungeon is a deep, dark cave in Bankarai where something has been buried away for a long time. So long, in fact, that the people who are guarding this grave, in large part, don't know what it is. And it's a dark, horrible grave that a number of Nord mercenaries are taking ashes and bones and stuff out of it, and you're tasked with learning what the heck is going on, why are they doing that, and trying to put a stop to it.
That's pretty much it.
Well, wait, there's a little extra though, I think. Someone told me there's some mysteries down there that you might have to try extra hard to find.
So this is one of those things that we're trying to avoid because I really want to watch streams and stuff like that of people figuring things out. But there are some secrets in here that are going to be great.
You don't want to take a long look around when you're heading through the
Yes,
Okay,
there's
don't stare
all
at the
kinds of
wall.
cool stuff in here.
Got it.
Finn, I know the grappling hook really tickles you.
Yeah, I love
It tickles us. Don't get me wrong. It really tickles
That's
us.
something.
You have a
I'm not gonna
grappling hook
say
that
where,
tickles
but it
you?
tickles us.
That's awesome.
I'm just saying.
We've gotten to
It's a family stream.
See?
Here's my question, sir.
By all means, ask about the tickle hook.
There is nothing more satisfying than finding a spot way above your head that you cannot travel to and
Correct.
using that grappling hook and just flying to that spot.
Yeah.
So we love that mechanic. We're happy to see that mechanic is going into some of the dungeon content.
Well, wait till you play.
In other words, there's something big at the very top where we grapple to. I get it. But is that type of mechanic or more creative things like that something that we can look forward to as dungeons evolve in ESO?
So yes and no. So whenever we do a dungeon and put together some pieces and stuff like that, we always take a look at how we can challenge and create new gameplay. Moongrave Fane is a good example. We had the moving block, and we got the idea to putting this on pressure plates to open gates and stuff like that. So when we saw the grappling hook going in for Dragonhold, we're like, all right, we got to take that. We got to see what we could do with that in a dungeon. And we did. And we kicked it up kind of. It's not just traversal. It's used in boss fights. It's used in new and interesting ways in boss fights. There's all kinds of like cool new traversal elements to it. We're going to challenge your dexterity. Yeah, I know, right?
That's it for me.
So, but as far as mechanics like that, we're always looking for new and interesting mechanics we can throw in there. And it's absolutely, if we see something that we think is going to be cool and new and interesting and fun to use, we're absolutely going to use it.
Well,
What about rewards? What can you get from these dungeons?
We have the standard items that you can get, the rewards like item sets and stuff like that. But so the two rewards for the completing veteran versions of these dungeons in Ice Reach, you get a weapon motif. That's the first time we've offered the weapon style.
And it's
so
a good one.
You get Lyris's battle axe as a weapon style.
That's cool.
And for Unhallowed Grave, we actually have these really cool new body markings, which are they're like textured red that look super cool when you put them on and stuff. And they're body markings, so they kind of play well with skins too. So you can actually, I'm interested to see what people kind of put together new and combinations with this stuff too. So. That's and then there might be some other stuff.
exciting.
New set.
Oh,
There are new
item
sets.
Yes.
I don't have them.
Check it out in the patch notes.
Yeah. You
there's
guys will be able to check out the patch
PGS
notes.
next
There's
week.
new
PGS next
item
week?
sets, and there's also Cyrodiil crafted sets.
in the update 25.
Yep. Yeah, so that'll all be detailed in the patch notes coming next week. Cyrodiil.
Yes.
I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else you guys
You guys
wanted
have
to
any
bring
other
up.
questions for us?
No.
How hard is the new dungeons compared to the last two?
I wasn't asking you.
Does anybody have any questions up here?
Wait.
Who's that
So
guy?
how hard is the new dungeon?
Let me add to what Gan's calling out though. So in the past, you and I have had this conversation before.
We have.
So
I think.
I think you know what I'm saying. In the past, there's been kind of the trifecta achievements, completing hard mode, speed run, no death. Now, you kind of moved away from that a little bit in the last year's dungeons. Is that seeing a return? Can we expect something like that?
You mean so we have those achievements.
Right.
And we're tying, we kind of like the incentive aspect of adding a title to it rather than the overall overarching reward. And that's mainly because we want to get more people to be able to feel good about running these dungeons and running these rewards and stuff like that. So, and we only have so much time to do all of this thing. So if it was up to me, every achievement would have its own. Like, we don't have that much time. So, and we want to incentivize doing these. These are like the landmark achievements. So, you know, like, oh, I want to do this because this is the thing I get. So we're going to incentivize that. But for the most part, the veteran is going to keep that cosmetic reward, and then the title is going to be offered for the pinnacle kind of thing. A lot along the lines of Godslayer and Godslayer and Sunspire and stuff like that. It's such a cool title that can stand by itself.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I got a quick question for Lehman, and it's switching gears a little bit. I wanted to talk just real quick about the prologue quest and how that prologue quest and the lore kind of ties into grabbing you in and just throwing you right into a lot of the parts of the Skyrim that we're going to be able to explore, such as Blackreach. How does that tie in if you're a starting player just getting right into that prologue?
Well, I mean, the purpose of a prologue is to kind of whet your appetite for the chapter that's upcoming. So there are elements. One of the cool things about Harrowstorm is there are elements of the dungeons that kind of tie into the prologue. So there are things that you discover in the dungeons which inform the prologue activities and the quest there. And I think by the end of your time doing the prologue quest, you're going to have a really good idea of, you know, who are the major players, what is the major, you know, plot that we're going to have to dig into during the chapter release. So, I can't wait to hear what people have to say about it.
They kind of like Raststone, but it's a little bit more obscure. So like in Raststone, you got both halves of the Raststone, and you're like, oh, these are two things of this. And then you go to the prologue, and he's like, all right, this is what it is. And you're like, oh, that's cool. So in the dungeons, you're actually finding two pieces that you don't necessarily know how these two things relate until you do the prologue. And then when you do the prologue, and you kind of see the two things you get, and you're like, oh, that's what it was. And it conveniently explains the name of the DLC. Too.
That's the beginning of the Dark Heart
And
of Skyrim.
that's one of the coolest things about those dungeons is at first glance, they don't look like they're connected at all.
Right.
And over the course of the prologue, it all gets tied together.
And part of the whole DLC, I mean, when we announced the DLC, it's update 25 of Harrowstorm. People are like, the F is a Harrowstorm, right? So you're like, yeah, well, you know, after you play through all of it, you'll be like, oh, I know what a Harrowstorm is now. And then you'll be like a lore buff.
Yep.
And you'll get to see actual Harrowstorms.
Somebody will be like, what's a Harrowstorm? Be like, I know what this is. I know what this is.
You'll get to actually see them in the chapter in Greymoor.
Yes, Harrowstorms?
Actual
Absolutely. You get to see Harrowstorms in the chapter.
That,
Yep.
You know, they're big.
They're up there. They're up there.
So we want to thank
I think everybody in the audience literally looked up.
There we are.